The day my boss fired me after 15 years, he looked me directly in the eyes and told me I had become replaceable. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask for another chance. I simply took the folder from his desk, thanked him for his time, and walked out of his office while everyone in the hallway watched me leave. What they didn't know was that I had discovered something 3 days earlier that could destroy his career. And I had already decided exactly when I would reveal it. My name is Claire Morgan, and I had spent nearly half my adult life working for Harrison & Cole Industries. I joined the company when I was 27, fresh out of graduate school, with a modest resume and a determination to prove myself. My first job was as a junior financial analyst. I spent long nights checking spreadsheets, reviewing contracts, and correcting mistakes nobody else wanted to touch. I wasn't the loudest person in the office, but I was dependable. If something had to be finished, I finished it. That quality eventually caught the attention of Daniel Reeves, the head of our division. Daniel was charismatic, confident, and extremely good at making people believe he cared about their careers. When he offered me a position on his executive team, I accepted immediately. Over the next several years, we worked closely together. I helped prepare his presentations, analyzed major acquisitions, and warned him whenever financial numbers didn't look right. He often told executives that I was the person he trusted most. I believed him. There were plenty of moments when I could have left the company for a better position, but Daniel always convinced me to stay. When another company offered me a significant raise, Daniel promised me a promotion. When our division struggled during a difficult year, he told me that people who stayed during hard times would be rewarded later. When he needed someone to work weekends, I was there. When he needed someone to explain complicated financial information to the board, I was there. For 15 years, I was there. Then everything changed when Harrison & Cole began negotiating a massive merger with a competing corporation. The merger was supposed to make our company one of the largest firms in our industry. Everyone was excited, but I noticed something strange almost immediately. Daniel became secretive. Meetings that I had always attended suddenly happened without me. Financial reports were being prepared by outside consultants. Documents that normally came through my department were sent directly to Daniel. Whenever I asked what was happening, he gave me the same answer. Nothing you need to worry about. Claire. That sentence became harder to believe every time he said it. One Monday morning, I noticed a financial report containing projections that didn't match the numbers in our internal accounting system. The difference was enormous. According to the report, one of our subsidiaries was suddenly worth nearly twice as much as it had. Been 6 months earlier, I asked the accounting director about it. She looked uncomfortable. I thought Daniel's office approved those numbers. Did you review them? No. That answer bothered me. I started quietly comparing older reports with the new projections. I discovered that several expenses had been moved between departments, certain losses had disappeared, and projected revenue had been increased without any supporting contracts. It wasn't a simple accounting error. Someone was making the company look more profitable than it really was. He printed the documents and brought them to Daniel. He barely glanced at them. Those numbers are preliminary. They're being used in the merger. Presentation. They'll be corrected later. Then, why are they being presented to the board? Daniel leaned back in his chair and stared at me. Claire, after 15 years, I thought you'd understand how these things work. That was the first moment I felt something had changed between us. I didn't respond. I simply took the documents and left. 3 days later, Daniel called me into his office. The human resources director, Melissa Grant, was sitting beside him. I knew immediately. Daniel gestured toward the chair. Please sit. I remained standing. What is this about? He took a slow breath. We've decided to restructure your department. I looked at Melissa. She avoided my eyes. Daniel continued. Unfortunately, your position is being eliminated. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Not because I was shocked that companies eliminated positions. I was shocked because I knew exactly what was happening. Who will handle my responsibilities? Daniel paused. Evan will oversee the transition. Evan was his nephew. He had been with the company for less than 2 years. I looked at Daniel. You're giving my responsibilities to Evan? This isn't about replacing you personally. I almost smiled. Then what is it about? Daniel's expression became colder. It's a business decision. I looked at the severance agreement Melissa had placed on the table. 15 years of service, reduced to 6 weeks of salary. I picked up the folder. Is there anything else? Daniel shook his head. I turned toward the door. Then he said something I would never forget. Claire, don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. I looked back at him. You're right. Then I walked away. I didn't make a scene. I didn't tell anyone what I suspected. Instead, I went home and opened my laptop. That night, I began searching through every document I was legally allowed to access from my personal records. I reviewed contracts, payment schedules, merger reports, and correspondence I had saved during my years at the company. Around midnight, I found something. There was a consulting company called North Star Strategic Advisors. I'd never heard of it. Yet Harrison & Cole had paid North Star more than $4 million over the previous 8 months. I searched the company's registration information. The company had been created less than a year earlier. It's listed. Executive was Daniel's brother-in-law. Sat completely still. Then I checked the invoices. Millions of dollars had supposedly been paid for strategic consulting services. But there were no detailed reports, no completed projects, no employee records, nothing. I kept going. The deeper I looked, the more disturbing it became. Some of the suspicious payments had been approved using my digital authorization. Credentials, that was impossible. Had never approved them. Someone had used my identity. And then I found the worst part. Several of the manipulated financial reports that made the company look more profitable contained my electronic approval. Daniel wasn't simply trying to push me out. He was creating a paper trail that could make me look responsible for financial fraud. My anger disappeared. What replaced it was something much calmer. Called an attorney the next morning. I explained everything. She listened carefully, and then asked one question. Does the board know? I don't think so. Then don't confront your boss yet. Why? Because if Daniel knows you discovered this, he may destroy evidence before the board can see it. That advice changed everything. For the next 2 weeks, I stayed silent. Daniel probably thought I was broken. He probably imagined me sitting at home applying for jobs and blaming myself. Instead, I worked with my attorney to organize everything. We created copies of documents that I had legitimate access to. We preserved emails. We documented dates and transactions. We identified discrepancies between the original financial records and the reports presented to executives. Then, unexpectedly, I received an email from the chairman of the board. He asked me to attend the upcoming quarterly board meeting. I read the message 3 times. Then I smiled. The timing was perfect. The board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday morning. On Monday night, Daniel called me. Claire, I heard you're attending tomorrow. Yes. I don't think that's necessary. That's interesting. What are you planning to discuss? I paused. Financial matters. There was silence on the other end. Claire, I'd really prefer that we handle this privately. I knew then that he was nervous. I think tomorrow is the appropriate time. I ended the call. The next morning, I arrived at Harrison & Cole 15 minutes early. The receptionist looked surprised to see me. I walked into the boardroom wearing a navy suit I had purchased years earlier for an executive presentation. Daniel was already there. His expression changed when he saw me. Claire? Daniel. He walked toward me. Listen, whatever you're upset about, this isn't the place. I smiled. I'm not upset. That seemed to make him more uncomfortable. The chairman called the meeting to order. Daniel presented the merger. Projections first, he spoke confidently about growth, profitability, and future opportunities. I listened quietly. Then he finished. The chairman looked toward me. Claire, we asked you here because the audit committee has reviewed some discrepancies in the financial records. Daniel immediately interrupted. With all due respect, Claire is no longer employed by this company. The chairman looked at him. We invited her. Daniel stopped speaking. I opened my folder. I'd like to begin with North Star Strategic Advisors. Daniel's face changed. I placed the first document on the table. This company received approximately $4.7 million from Harrison & Cole during the last 8 months. Nobody spoke. I continued. According to the invoices, the payments were for strategic consulting services. However, I could find no evidence that the company actually provided those services. Daniel leaned forward. Those Contracts were handled by the executive office. I know. I placed another document on the table, which is why I also found it interesting that North Star's registered executive is your brother-in-law. The room went silent. Daniel's face had gone pale. The chairman looked at him. Is that true? Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I wasn't finished. I placed copies of the original financial reports beside the revised versions. These are the numbers generated by our accounting system. Then I pointed toward the second set. These are the numbers presented to the merger committee. The difference was enormous. Revenue was artificially increased. Losses were moved between divisions. Several expenses disappeared entirely. One board member stared at the documents. Who authorized these revisions? Daniel looked at me. I slid one final document across the table. My electronic authorization appears on several of these reports. Daniel immediately spoke. You approved them. I looked directly at him. No, Daniel, I didn't. I opened my laptop. These are the system access logs. The board members leaned forward. The approvals were made from an executive office terminal. After midnight on dates when I wasn't in the building. Daniel's expression collapsed. I continued. Someone used my credentials. The chairman turned toward the company's legal counsel. Can we verify these records? The attorney nodded slowly. Yes. Daniel stood up. This is ridiculous. The chairman's voice became firm. Sit down, Daniel. Daniel sat for 15 years. I had watched him control meetings. Now he couldn't control anything. The board immediately suspended the merger negotiations and ordered an independent investigation. Daniel was placed on administrative leave before the meeting ended. Evan was removed from the transition team, and the suspicious payments were referred for further investigation. As I walked out of the boardroom, Daniel followed me into the hallway. Claire stopped. He looked exhausted. I never wanted it to go this far. I turned around. You fired me because you thought I was a liability. I was trying to protect the company. No, I said quietly. You were trying to protect yourself. He lowered his eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the folder he had pushed across his desk. 6 weeks of salary. 15 years of loyalty. That was all he thought I was. Worth the investigation. Lasted several months. It eventually confirmed that millions of dollars had been improperly transferred through companies connected to Daniel's family. The merger was canceled, several executives were removed, and the company recovered a significant portion of the money. The board offered me my old position back. I declined. Instead, they offered me a newly created executive position overseeing financial integrity and internal controls. This time, I negotiated the contract myself. Better salary, greater authority, direct access to the board, and complete independence from the executives I was responsible for auditing. I accepted dawn. My first morning in the new position, I walked past Daniel's old office. The nameplate had already been removed. I stopped for a second and looked through the glass. 15 years of my life had happened inside that building. There had been victories, failures, friendships, long nights, and countless sacrifices. For a long time, I thought losing that job would be the worst thing that had ever happened to my career. I was wrong. Being betrayed forced me to see the truth. My career had never belonged to Daniel. My success had never depended on his approval. Everything I had built came from 15 years of experience, discipline, and refusing to compromise my integrity. Daniel thought firing me would make me powerless. Instead, it gave me the freedom to tell the truth without worrying about protecting him. And that was the lesson I carried with me from that boardroom. When someone betrays you, don't always rush to fight back. Sometimes the strongest response is to stay calm, gather the truth, and wait until the person who underestimated you has nowhere left to hide. Because I didn't lose my career that day. I lost a boss I had trusted. And in the end, that turned out to be the best thing he ever gave me.